first-ranking member for his opening statement.
Madam Chair, thank you for today's hearing. I want to thank our witnesses. I appreciate you all being here. Appreciate the folks who serve in the district government, and Mr. Miller, appreciate your service to our country, and I hope we can have a frank discussion about the future of the District of Columbia. Any discussion about the future of D.C. would not be complete without a discussion about the district's current challenges. In 1995, due to a financial crisis brought about by corruption and mismanagement, the federal government had to take control of the D.C. budget. I wish I could say the situation has improved, but this is simply not the case. For fiscal year 2020, the district requested $15.5 billion from Congress, burden borne by taxpayers in Virginia and Maryland, Ohio and California, taxpayers all across the country, frankly. In fact, local revenue sources only account for half of D.C.'s funding sources. The district is simply not yet self-sustainable. Taxpayers nationwide currently foot the bill for the D.C. courts, unfunded pension liabilities, and the care and custody of D.C. prisoners. The district also receives other subsidies from the federal government, including $45 million for the improvement of D.C. public school system. And we cannot ignore the elephant in the room, ladies and gentlemen. The district government currently faces serious allegations of misconduct. We hope to have an honest conversation about some of these issues this morning, which is why we asked Chairman Cummings to invite D.C. Council member and former Metro Chairman Jack Evans to testify today. However, the chairman denied that request. Instead, he asked the Inspector General for the Metro to examine Mr. Evans' misconduct. But just yesterday, in the same room, when we asked that the Metro Inspector General testify at the subcommittee hearing, we were denied. We were denied because the Democrats said the Metro Inspector General wasn't a true Inspector General. He wasn't part of the Inspector General community. Hearing yesterday was the head of the Inspector General Association, but we were denied our witness. Here's what we do know. From the documents we've obtained, Mr. Evans tried to obstruct an internal Metro investigation into his misdeeds, threatening the jobs of Metro employees who actually cooperated with the internal investigation. And he had consulting relationship with companies that were Metro vendors or sought to do business with the Metro. Evans did not disclose these conflicts of interest to the Metro board. Mr. Evans attempted to exploit his position on the Metro board for his own personal benefit. He even urged, and this is probably the one that bothers me the most, he even urged the Inspector General, an Inspector General investigation into a vendor that competed with his consulting client, tried to sic the authority of government on someone to benefit his own personal client. Evans planned to sell his government access and connections to private companies for his own personal gain. And recognize, too, that the Jack Evans scandal does not appear to be an isolated incident. The same documents we've obtained show that another D.C. representative on the Metro board helped Evans to obstruct the internal investigation by harassing staff and preventing the board from having a quorum to meet. Sadly, the allegations against Mr. Evans are just the latest in a series of local D.C. political scandals. Mr. Berry, Mr. Gray, Jim Graham, Kwame Brown, Michael Brown, Harry Thomas Jr., all recent elected D.C. officials with a cloud of scandal, some actually serving time in jail. We cannot and should not ignore these unpleasant facts. I understand that supporters of H.R. 51 believe that much of the current District of Columbia should become the 51st state. But this is not what the Founding Fathers intended. They understood and they carefully crafted the Constitution so that the seat of the federal government would purposely and specifically not be within a state. Let's look at what the Constitution says. Article 1 called for the creation of a federal district to serve as the permanent seat of the national government and granted Congress the power, quote, to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 square miles, as may, by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of the government of the United States. In fact, James Madison in Federalist 43 articulated that if the capital city were situated within a state, the federal government would be subject to undue influence by the host state. Under H.R. 51, the federal government would be entirely dependent upon the new state of Washington, D.C. for water, for utilities, for infrastructure, communications, even police and fire services. By virtue of this relationship, this new state would have incredible power over the other states. That's why this issue deserves an honest discussion. Of course, I support voting rights, but let's be clear. H.R. 51, even if signed into law, could not turn Washington, D.C. into a state. In order for the district to become the 51st state, Congress needs to pass, and the states need to ratify, an amendment to the Constitution. Constitution is not distinguished between the seat of the federal government and the district where the government is seated, meaning the Constitution would in fact need to be changed. In fact, Justice Departments of both parties going back to 1963 have determined that Congress cannot admit D.C. as a state legislatively. The chair in her opening statement said, our opposition is about power. That's just not the truth. That's not the case. It's about the Constitution. If you want to change it, there's a remedy, and it requires amending the Constitution of the United States. Madam Chair, finally, we had asked for transcribed interviews for certain witnesses. We had asked for witnesses to be present at both yesterday's hearing and today's hearing. All of those requests were denied. So pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11, I move the committee subpoena Jack Evans of the D.C. Council and ask that we take this matter up now. Madam Chair, with that, I yield back, but we have a motion obviously on the table.
Madam Chairman,